could the God of the Bible be Satan? Let's talk about one of the very first craziest scenarios, most sadistic scenarios I've ever read in the Bible. I came across Genesis 22, where God is speaking to Abraham, and he wants to test Abraham, and this is what he does. He says, sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. So Abraham's speaking to God now. They got an open conversation, right? They're having a communication back and forth, two-way conversation. This entity he's talking to is a person that he thinks is a God. I don't think he's talking to some mystical, invisible figure. Then God said, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about. Can you imagine that? He's telling this guy, I want you to take your firstborn son and I want you to kill him in my name's sake. That's what he's telling him. So early the next morning, Abraham got up and sadly saddled his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, this man is following through on this craziness. Tell me this ain't sadistic. On both sides, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you. So he's lying now. Now he's telling a lie. He's trying to tell his servants, man, we're just going to go over here and pray for a minute and come right back. He ain't doing that. He's getting ready to go murder his own son in the namesake of this fake God. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. So now he's putting the wood on his son. And he himself carried the fire and the knife as 2 of them went together. Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father, yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here, Isaac said. But where's the lamb for the burnt offering? He don't even know he's about to get murdered by his own dad. He doesn't even know his dad is taking him up there to kill him in the name of his God with the lowercase g. Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. Again, he's lying again. When they reached the place that God had told him about, Abraham built an altar and he arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything. Now I know you fear God. Why? You think he did this because he wants to show God how faithful he is? He did it because he doesn't want the wrath of God. You see? That's why God said, now I know you fear me. That is very sadistic and very evil. Very evil. That's an evil thing to do. You see what this God of the Bible does? He preys on fear. He preys on fear. And I do mean a he. Now I'm going to call it a he because the God of the Bible are men. They're actual flesh and blood people. It's not in the creator of any universe at all. And so he's preying on the fear. He's using fear tactics to win people over. And these people, they don't understand that the powers that he has are just high levels of technology and wisdom that he can wield over them. This whole religion thing this dogma is a complete psychosis. The reason why the majority of people are going to church and doing all this praying and everything else, and I've had a few Christians tell me this, is because they're doing it just in case. They think that, I better do this just in case heaven is real. You yourself want self-preservation. You do not want to burn in this fake lake of fire that doesn't even exist because that was added to the Bible. But you think you're going to suffer for all eternity. So instead of having the suffering, that's where the fear kicks in. Man, I better do this because if I don't, I'm going to face the wrath of God for all eternity. So then what people do is they pretend. Let's have a look here. How many people are killed in the Bible? That's the topic of this talk, right? Well, let's have a look. He wiped out all but 7 humans during the flood, killed countless tribes and cities. This is God doing this. He even killed his own son. He loves killing. He killed around 3 million people according to the Bible. So who's doing all the killing in this Bible? Have you read the Bible? Do you know who's ordering all this bloodshed and murder and killing? And if this ordering of bloodshed and murder and killing was to create a better world, look at the state of the world today. I don't think it worked, guys. If that was the ultimate goal, was to kill all these people to make a better future, God killed around 3 million people, according to the Bible. And how many people did Satan kill? There's a discretion between the interpretation of the actions between 3 and 10 people. That's what Satan supposedly killed. Between three for sure. There's 3 for sure, but 10. Now, the 10 are interesting because the 7 sons and 3 daughters of Job. But the thing about that killing, if you want to call it that, he does it because God allowed it as part of a bet. There was a wager between God and Satan about this, and Satan won the wager, and so he let him kill Job's sons and daughters. So technically the blood is on God's hands. So when you analyze that and you go, man, it just doesn't make any sense. Who's doing all this killing? Do you think it's the creator of the universe, the all-knowing, all-loving God that creates planets and universes, that transcends time and dimensions, that can create molecules and atoms and all this kind of stuff? Or are you finally wrapping your brain around the fact that it's most likely not that entity, but most likely someone or some people that masqueraded as gods back then and fooled, I mean pure tomfoolery, these people, hoodwinked these people, and got them believing in this information. This entity or these entities, these people were not God at all. They were just normal flesh and blood people with more advanced knowledge and wisdom. And because of that, they were able to rule over people in a way that the people would deify them and pray to them. And then that same tactic that they use in fear to get people to worship them and work for them as like slaves, to get them to kill and slaughter one another, is the same exact teachings that you're getting today and teaching to your kids. It hasn't changed. It's the same thing in the New. This is the Old Testament. Oh, well, let me show you something in the New Testament then. Well, Jesus, he said, I'm an advocate for slavery. Yeah, slaves. Make sure you honor and worship your master like you would honor and worship me. That's in the Bible. That's in the New Testament. And any entity or beings or any writings of anybody who wrote anything about advocating for slavery, I'm totally against that. I guarantee you I'm totally against that. And so what are we talking about here? Who is doing all this killing in the Bible? It's not Satan. The Bible was written from 100 AD to 900 AD by Phoenicians, followers of Hermes, Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. That's who wrote the Bible, and they didn't write a Bible. What they did was they started copying ancient texts from all over the world, remnants of the Library of Alexandria, copying these ancient texts onto different parchment papers and stuffing them inside of vases and jars inside of caves. Over time, between 100 AD to 900 AD, people, explorers and archaeologists, coming across these vases and opening them up, finding all these ancient writings. These ancient writings were copied from, okay, let me translate this tablet onto this writing, onto this parchment paper, and then I'm gonna store it away. And so over the course of that amount of time, 100 AD to 900 AD, that's after the death. Jesus and Paul and Judas and Matthew, they were dead. The Bible wasn't written in real time. That was written long after these people were gone and passed away. So where did this information come from? It came from ancient texts and ancient tablets, recopied onto different parchment papers. And the proof is in the pudding. You can go back and you can find those same exact quotes and statements and words out of the ancient text. It comes right from there. Some of it copied word for word directly onto these parchment papers. Then later, people who discovered these things, eventually they came together, said, hey, let's make a canonized book out of this. And that's when the Council of Nicaea got together and they started going through and curating what they would put into this canonized Bible and what they would not put into the canonized Bible. And then when they got to a good mix of neuroscience where they knew they could utilize this information to control masses of people, they said, we're going to put this one out right here. Boom. We altered this. We changed that. We mistranslated this by accident on purpose. We changed this around. We put this over here. We moved this around. We took out the part talking about aliens. We took out the part talking about spaceships and UFOs. Okay, so now I think we got something here. We can dominate the planet with this. And then how did this information get spread around the world? How did Christianity make it around this planet? Well, you do just like your father does it, don't you? Apples don't fall far from the tree. God was doing all the murdering and killing, so did the people. The people followed the book of the Bible, letter, word for word, and that's what they do. They went around this planet, killing and murdering every indigenous culture. Christianity is literally spread by killing and murder and rape. They slaughtered and killed over 80 million people under the Pope's orders. The museums for the Inquisitions still exist. You can go into Rome and you can go to museums where you see the tools that they would use on people. They would take and go to an indigenous culture. Every continent has been attacked by these people. They go out, and every continent you could think of, they show up with we're here to bring you the good news. And then the next thing you know, you're getting raped, pillaged. They take the chief of the town, bring the chief to the center of the town, call everybody down. Then they burn the chief or kill the chief or torture him in front of everyone and say, now, you learn our language and you learn our religion, or this is going to happen to you. And that's how Christianity got spread around the planet. It didn't get spread by love and all the good vibes and all this kind of stuff. And we bring in the gospel and the good news to the planet. No, it got spread by rape, torture, murder, killing. And then after that happened to that first generation, but the second generation and the third generation comes, now they're born right into it. They automatically are into it. That's the new dogma. That's their new belief system. And then they're going to teach it on and on and on and on and on. These people were geniuses, how they put this thing together. Absolute geniuses. That's neuroscience at the highest level. They applied that neuroscience through this text, manipulated it, and used it to manipulate the entire planet, which generates today trillions of dollars globally. And people that are running around here, dropping on their knees and begging for all this stuff, drop down on your knees and weep and beg the Lord to give you this and beg the Lord to give you that. That's not how it works. You haven't read the text, you haven't read the ancient tablets, and you haven't read the parts of the Bible that they didn't corrupt, that they forgot to take out. Like the fact that you are God's, and that Jesus said, you will do greater things than me. The last people on the planet. We're still last against all the other races in terms of where we've grown consciously and spiritually, financially, economically on this planet. We're still in last place. It is a fact. It's a fact. As a complete group, globally, black people are still being sold as slaves in Libya today. $400 a head. When I go to Egypt, I have an armed guard, and my head is on a swivel looking for any abductors, because Libya is right around the corner. Today, and this is 2022, Ephesians 6:5. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with deep respect and fear. That's the same fear that God was demanding with Abraham, wasn't it? Why do you think they had church? But the master would sit there at the church to make sure that that slave who was reading the book was reading some of these verses, letting them know, hey man, you got to obey this is in the Bible. We got to obey these people. We got to worship these people. Serve them sincerely as you would serve Christ. Ephesians 6:5. Christians who are slaves should give their masters full respect so that the name of God and his teaching will not be shamed. If your master is a Christian, that is no excuse for being disrespectful. You should work all the harder. You see how they programming you to work hard and be a slave? You should work all the harder because you are helping another believer by your effort. Timothy, and encourage everyone to obey them. 1 Timothy 6:1-2. In the following parable, Jesus clearly approves of beating slaves, even if they don't know they were doing anything wrong. The servant will be severely punished, for though he knew his duty, he refused to do it. But people who are not aware that they are doing wrong will be punished only lightly. Much is required from those whom much is given. They use this all the time. That's a famous quote, but nobody knows that quote comes from the advocation of slavery in the Bible. Nobody knows that. Much is required from those to whom much is given, and much more is required from those whom much more is given. Luke 12:47-48. You didn't know that. That's a famous quote that everyone uses, right? They use it all the time. There's just so much of this going on. So much murder and killing and pillaging in this book, where these gods with an S, lowercase g, were people, were fighting each other, and they were using humans to do these battles. Kill people who don't listen to priests. Anyone arrogant enough to reject the verdict of another judge or of the priest who represents the Lord your God must be put to death. Such evil must be purged from Israel. Deuteronomy 17:12. Now, a lot of this came out after the 10 Commandments, by the way. So the 10 Commandments came out in the beginning, thou shalt not kill. And the next thing you know, kill non-believers. They entered into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, with their heart and their soul. And everyone who will not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, was put to death, whether small or great, whether man or woman. 2 Chronicles 15:12-13. When Moses went to the top of the mountain and got the 10 Commandments, he came back down. He didn't like what was going on in his camp, so he started killing everybody. After he got the commandment to not kill, he came back down and started killing everybody. But this is all authorized by the God. Suppose a man or woman among you in one of your towns that the Lord your God is giving you has done evil in the sight of the Lord your God and has violated the covenant by serving other gods or by worshiping the sun. This is what Akhenaten was when he was worshiping the sun god Aten, who is also known as Amun-Ra. So this guy here who's telling this God here is speaking to his people, telling them, look, if you worship my cousin Amun-Ra, you're in trouble. And so he says, or any of the forces of heaven which I have strictly forbidden, when you hear about it, investigate the matter thoroughly. If it is true that this detestable thing has been done in Israel, then that man or woman must be taken to the gates of the town and stoned to death. Deuteronomy 17:2-5. Marduk is one of the most evil people to ever exist, and that's Amun-Ra. That was the sun god. And so what was happening there was these Anunnaki people, they were arguing and battling each other using human beings as the warriors. And sometimes you would see that the angels, which are really the aliens, would get involved in these battles as well and go to war with the humans. They'd have to put on helmets and breastplates, and they would have to get swords, and they have to go fight. These same angels that the Bible talks about were having sex with women and homosexual sex. They were getting drunk. They were doing partying, all this crazy stuff, right? So that was in the Bible too. So these were not angels, these were aliens, these Anunnaki people working and fighting with human beings for whatever reason. They always wanted to have control over more land, more resources. And these people, these aliens, kept fighting each other using human beings as chattel. If you look into the Indian Vedas, you find that there were these huge flying cities. These huge flying cities, in my opinion, are UFOs. They were flying cities with literally thousands of people in each one of these vessels. And these vessels would go to war above land against each other in plain broad daylight. Well documented. These people were warring people and always fighting over more resources, more land, because why? Earth was a breakaway civilization for them. And it was always a consistent battle over control from the very first time they got here. The very first time, the first one who landed here was Alalu. Alalu killed the king on Nibiru and then fled to Earth. And then from Earth, he negotiated back with them a deal that he would have kingship and he would keep his life on Earth as long as he gave them the location of some of the resources and was able to transport resources back to Nibiru, which were greatly needed there. So this story is much bigger than you even think. You don't even come close, most people, to understanding where all this information comes from and what the true information is really all about and what the underlying story is really all about. Who is doing all this killing? I believe it. Everybody thinks it's this creator, this grand creator, this grand artist. I believe that. But guess what? In that book, that ain't it. That's a murdering, a sadistic, psychopathic, narcissistic murderer. That's what that is. And unfortunately, that has really crept into the DNA and the epigenetics of people on this planet and has us beating that same garbage into every single one of our generations over and over again. And I'm here to try to stop it. You can believe in a creator of a universe. There's nothing wrong with that. But understand that that is something that doesn't even exist inside this universe. You're not going to interact with, you're not going to walk up and shake hands with this entity. You're not going to hang out and go have a beer at the bar and hang out with prostitutes like Jesus did. You're not going to, have casual conversations about killing people. That's not going to happen. There's no book on this planet that actually, and from ancient texts, that says this is the actual real God. They're all talking about multiple gods with an S, and these gods They all turn out to be regular old people that put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you and me. People are thinking that human beings are the only people that exist in the universe. Human beings are the new kids on the block, but we are just an offspring or a cousin of the same type of body type that exists throughout the entire universe. Earth is an abandoned seed colony. That's what we are. We're living on an abandoned seed colony, and we are really trying, scratching in the dark, trying to find our way. And a lot of the DNA and genetics that we have from our past generations, also we have the genetics and DNA from the past generations from these same people, these same beings, every single one of us. So who are the aliens? We all are the aliens, every single one of us. As a matter of fact, this planet Earth and the solar system that we're in does not even come from the Milky Way galaxy. Look it up. Earth doesn't come from the Milky Way galaxy. Earth comes from the Sagittarius Dwarf galaxy. Sagittarius Dwarf, not the Sagittarius constellation, but the Sagittarius Dwarf galaxy is another smaller galaxy that's actually merging with the Milky Way right now as we speak. And we found out we meaning astrophysicists, found out that the point in which the merger actually occurs and actually began is where Earth and our entire solar system was dropped into place, merging into the Milky Way. So this entire solar system is alien to this galaxy. We're not even from this galaxy. We're from a Sagittarius galaxy. We're not even from the Milky Way galaxy. And in 5 billion years, the Milky Way galaxy will merge with the Andromeda galaxy, making us Milkomeda in 5 billion years. And the sky will look again totally different at night. When you look up at the sky in a night that doesn't have any light pollution and you see that swath of stars going across, everybody says, that's the Milky Way. We found out that's not the Milky Way galaxy, and now all astrophysics books have already been rewritten. When you go to college and university to study astrophysics, you'll learn now today that is the Sagittarius Dwarf going across the sky, not the Milky Way. All of this comes from a totally different galaxy. So the story is much grander and bigger than you ever thought of, than you can ever possibly even dream if you just go out there and start doing some real research. And when you dig into this Bible and look into who's doing all the killing, you discover that the God of the Bible, which is not the creator of the universe, is the one doing all the killing. Unfortunately, that's the case. And so the true demon, the true darkness, the true dark night, the true evil and malice is coming from the one that you're dropping on your knees and crying to every night. What that does is it allows you to take all your personal responsibility and push it out on something else that doesn't even exist. The way the Bible is written, if you believe that Satan the devil, and he's got so much power that he's almost as smart as God, right? Used to be on the right hand of God. He has almost the same exact level of power. And he's got all this high IQ in the thousands, probably in the tens of thousands, way smarter than a human being. And you think that this entity is going to follow this book written by men down to the letter until its own demise? Isn't it more obvious that this book has been written to lead human beings down to the letter to their own demise? And that's exactly what's happening. The entity that you're worshiping and praying to and begging and everything else in that book is actually Satan. That's Enlil from the ancient Sumerian tablets, also known as Satan, the Lord of Eden. That's who you've been praying to. That's who you've been begging for help and forgiveness and everything else. The thing about what they've done to human beings is they've got us living such short lives that by the time we realize what's going on, we're already about to die. I think that if people were living for at least 800 years, they'd get to a certain level of understanding where they realize the dogma's gone, the bullcrap is gone, the stupid religions are all gone. It's really all about the internal, the work you do on the inside of yourself and how you connect directly from the inside out to the universe and how loving you can be and how much you can help people and how you can help bring heaven to earth. How can you create your own heaven right here where you're at? That's really the ultimate mission. The mission is to learn how to live now. Complete the mission here first. This is the mission right now. Bringing heaven to earth and living right now. Man, life is good. Every single day. When you come to that realization that you have a part control in your own destiny, that you can do the inner work and create the outer work, the inner work will reflect on the outside, that you can become a master at manifesting, that you can learn how to help millions of people through conscious thoughts, that you can travel in time and see the future and do actions here today that will alter the future reality in the third dimension, that's when you are on to something. And that your consciousness is already divine being streamed into this dimension from higher dimensions.
I was finding that whenever I applied those questions to things that don't quite make sense in the stories you tell from the Bible, it was leading to a completely different storyline that turned out to be the summary form of the Sumerian stories of our ancestors' contact with sky people, or what today we would call aliens or ETs.
You know, when you look into the Nag Hammadi and you see information about the archons, and where they're saying that, for example, one of the archons resembled this reptilian type being, and then another archon kind of almost resembles a gray alien, from the description at least. They supposedly in some way they are able to absorb human energy, negative emotions.
Oh yes. I think that's the most important insight of the Archon stories.
Yeah.
The reason it isn't in the mainstream canon is because it contains themes that didn't fit the mainstream. So that includes an abduction narrative, that includes an invasion narrative. It includes a detailed unpacking of Genesis 6, which is a hybridization narrative. And clearly there came a point in the development of Christianity where they thought, this is going to be inconvenient. It wasn't just that they taught us about how to do plumbing or how to build a wind tool. It was things like art, makeup, adornment, more interesting clothing. They taught us how to be a civilization, and we were grateful for their input and we celebrated them for a long time. Well, I mean, people today know me as the Paleo Contact guy. That's what I write about. I think I've written about 15 books, but the 4 best-selling ones are the ones about paleo contact. That's the theory that in the deep past, our ancestors had contact with other civilizations, with ET visitors. But by rooting into it often surprises people. This is from the world of Christian ministry. And I was for 33 years in church-based ministry. I was an archdeacon in the Anglican Church, and I was a theological educator. I was training pastors. So this sounds quite different to ET contact and human origins, but it was the theological educator role that actually led me into the world of ET contact, because I was teaching pastors the principles of interpreting ancient texts. And so we do source analysis, form analysis, all the essential linguistic questions of what do the words mean. And I was finding that whenever I applied those questions to things that don't quite make sense in the stories you tell from the Bible, it was leading to a completely different storyline that turned out to be the summary form of the Sumerian stories of our ancestors' contact with sky people, or what today we would call aliens or ETs. And what I've found, I've been really surprised since publishing Escaping from Eden. I've been contacted by so many people who are in communities of faith. They're in churches. And either they've had close encounter experiences, and suddenly they realize they're not allowed to mention that. You have all sorts of other supernatural experiences in a church, but don't mention ETs. Or they've seen things in the Bible in the same way I have. And they thought, wait a minute, that's a close encounter. That's a UFO. That's contact. That's colonization. And then found in their Bible group with their pastor, you don't mention that again if you want to stay in this church. And they're totally isolated. And they can be off-sided from their entire family if they start talking about these things. So they reach out to me, and often I hear from people, they may have had a close encounter experience when they were 15 years old, and now they're 65, and they still haven't been able to process it. They've never had anyone they could talk to about it. They haven't discovered all the communities on YouTube full of experiences, but they've seen me and they thought, I want to tell that guy. And so a lot of the time I'm hearing experiences that are decades old that people haven't felt before in the share. It's a taboo subject, but our churches are at least half full of contactees and experiences who just haven't been able to come out the closet.
That's so true, because it's such a taboo. You can be excommunicated, you can be ostracized, right? So it's a tough thing to talk about, especially, in the Black and brown communities. It's almost like you dare not even bring anything up about a UFO or an alien. At least when I was growing up, in the 70s and 80s, it was like a topic that was really taboo, and hard to talk about. So people go for decades, literally, with this information and this thing on their consciousness, but they can't seem to find any way to get it out, to at least just express it to somebody that would listen without judging them.
Exactly. And that can go for generations. I mean, I often hear from people, guys will talk to me who might be in their 30s. They'll say, I've had this experience. They'll describe a close encounter, an abduction experience even, but they'll want help processing it. And I'll say, are you the first person in your family to have had this experience? Have your parents had anything like this happen to them? And they'll say, oh, I don't think so. I think like mother, dad would have mentioned something like that. And then a week later, they'll call me back and say, I mentioned it to my dad. And he said, well, son, since you said that, let me think what happened to me when I was 15. And they've kept this story. They haven't shared it because they wanted to protect their kids.
Yeah.
They didn't want their kids to think they were crazy.
Of course.
They didn't want anything disturbing to happen to them. So just steer them away from the whole topic. But it's actually impoverished the family because there was information there. They could have prepared their kids for these experiences. The kid could have had a less isolated, happier life if they'd known, actually, this happened to dad. He's okay. We will all survive this. And sort of breaking that taboo within a family can be really hurtful. But the other thing, I'm really excited about my latest book, The Eden Conspiracy, because it shows that in the Bible, the narrative originally at the Hebrew Scriptures was one of paleo contact. It's one that talked about the Tseber Hashemayim arriving. And that's the Hebrew for the sky armies.
That's right.
Turning up. It talks about invasion. It talks about the parceling up of the lands. El Elyon gives all the lands to the Elohim. It's a moment of colonization.
And Elohim is plural.
Elohim is plural, the powerful one. And when you read it that way, the stories make sense. Suddenly it makes sense why the Yahweh character is trying to get land off the other powerful ones, because he didn't get any land. He got a people group with no land. So when he turns up in the story, he has to take his people out of somebody else's land. Until you got that framework, you don't understand what all the wars are about. But worse than that, most Bibles translate Elohim as God.
Singular.
Singular.
Right.
Most believers look at El Elyon, they think that's God. They read Yahweh, they think that's God. And the story that produces is a total distortion. Denying you God a God, he goes to war with himself. Thousands of humans get killed, get slaughtered when he gets into conflict with himself. He changes his mind, and so there's a genocide in the process. And so we end up with this monstrous image of a God. And it affects how we think about ourselves. We become these servile little creatures tiptoeing around, desperately afraid we might offend the Almighty, make a mistake, fall out of his will. And it is so disempowering. You go back to the original meaning of those texts. The Bible is an empowering document. It's talking about people power. It's talking about the power of the human being. And you read those stories realizing our ancestors went to great lengths to get this information to us so we could know what our true power is. And then along the way, editors, redactors, let's change how that's told. And they turn it into a story that suppresses us and makes us manageable.
There's a remix going on. In music, they call it a remix, right? And so what's really sad about it is it gives us, like you said, this different perspective of what a true all-knowing, all-loving God really is, which I personally believe exists. However, I keep trying to tell people that the one that you're reading about in this book, or the ones, I say plural, those are people that masqueraded as God. They allow the people to praise them.
Well, yes. I mean, that's half the story. And the other half of the story is that in the 6th century BCE, these editors sat down and they got now a word that's understood to mean God, the source of the cosmos, and they layer it over the top of other stories. So they go back to stories that are really stories of dragons, of oppression of human beings, by draconian entities, and they put the holy name of God over that text. So even if those awful draconian creatures weren't masquerading as God, the translators of that.
Gotcha. Absolutely.
That's where that ends. I mean, I tell you where that ends up. It ends up with human beings justifying invading each other's countries, enslaving other people groups, all kinds of misogyny and abuse in the name of God. Because that's what God does in the Bible. And they don't realize, no, that's not the behavior of God. That is a violent colonization. And you just claimed as something holy.
So real.
You know, when people challenge me and they say, this is not Orthodox Christianity, well, let's just slow down. Tell me what you mean by Orthodox Christianity. Because let's go back to the beginning of Christianity. Let's talk about origin, the founder, the father of hermeneutics, the principles of Bible interpretation. Everyone acknowledges origin as that. Clement of Alexandria, Irenaeus, he's the guy who came up with the term Old Testament and New Testament. Justin Martyr. You go to those people, they would say what I'm saying about how to read the Old Testament stories. But unfortunately, some votes went the wrong way. Everybody forgets what they said. They were foundational people, and this other mainstream took over. And what people call Orthodox Christianity is the mainstream after those votes. But you go back to the beginning, and the first Christians, they knew about contact experiences. It's there in the New Testament, 1 John 4. They knew about ancestral spirits. It's there in the Bible, in Hebrews 12. They knew about beings washing around in the text that were not God. They talked about the craftsman who came and terraformed a devastated planet. They knew that wasn't a human entity. They knew about the Elohim and the Yahweh stories not being God's stories. Origin said, if you read those as God's stories, you have to believe of God such things you wouldn't believe of the most savage and unjust of men. He had it absolutely clear.
Yes, he did.
If we had them in this room, we'd all be singing of the same Yoshi. It's all been forgotten, and Christianity is assumed to be today's orthodoxy. But in the beginning, it was not.
And to add more credence to what Mr. Paul Wallis is saying, if you just simply read the book of Deuteronomy, your eyes will be opened and realize that, wait, this can't be God telling people to kill women and kill children, and it's okay to rape women and all. It's just not the creator of the universe. The creator of the universe is not interested in raping a woman, right? And sending you to a war halfway across your region to people you don't know because one person doesn't worship me properly, so wipe out the entire town and bring the spoils back to me. Why does God need spoils?
Exactly. And look at what the spoils are. Gold, beef, lamb, virgin girls. And you read it closely. That's not for the priests. That is for this entity called Yahweh. What does he want with those? And it's the same with all the world's dragon narratives.
Interesting.
You'll be shocked to hear me associate those. But anyone who knows the dragon stories, whether you're getting them from Wales, China, Russia, anywhere else, they all follow the same shape. There's a time when our ancestors were governed by non-human entities, reptilian entities, who wanted those things, and they enslaved the people, and they would leave the people alone as long as they got all the gold and beef and lamb and virgin girls that they wanted. And human beings lived that way for a while until they realized, wait a minute, if we act together and if we agree together not to serve this thing, what's it going to do? Can't kill all of us, might kill some of us. And they reach a point, and we've seen this in human history, and this happened in the Philippines, where the people couldn't be terrorized anymore. Terror had been used for too long. And people reach the point of saying, what they're going to do, they could only kill us. And when the people reach that, it pivots into a kind of courage. They come together and they say, no, we're not going to work for you any longer.
That's it.
That story is in the Bible. Read 1 Samuel 15. That's when the people come together and they say to Yahweh, no more beef, lamb, gold, virgin girls for you. We're going to be led by a human being henceforward. And it was like, if I could say the scales falling from my eyes, I reread that after doing the research on Elohim and Yahweh, and I realized this is a dragon story. And that name originally was associated with the dragon story. And there are actually phonetic clues in that name that it is a dragon narrative. Now, once you made that switch, you reread all the stories of the Bible and you recognize there are lessons about people power, the dangers of covert government, issues of hidden hands and geopolitics. It's an incredibly broad education that's in the Bible. So to someone coming to me saying, look, the Bible's true, stop messing about with it, I would say, yeah, it's full of powerful information. And we should stop messing about with it. Let's go to the root meanings and let these stories emerge.
You know, when you look into the Nag Hammadi and you see information about the archons, right? And where they're saying that, for example, one of the archons resembled this reptilian type being, and then another archon kind of almost resembles a gray alien, from the description at least. It's pretty interesting that they supposedly in some way they are able to absorb human energy, negative emotions.
Oh, yes. I think that's the most important insight of the Archon stories, which the original Christians talked about. So that's the Gnostics. They weren't some add-on or some alternative fringe. They were the original Christians before Orthodoxy became the mainstream.
Yeah.
And the thing about an Archon is exactly what you said, Billy. It is an energy-based being that feeds off the energy of biological life like us.
Yeah.
And they can influence our thinking and our emotions so that we will go into heavier emotional states, whether that's fear, anxiety, rage, and then they feed off that.
Yeah.
And so you would have archons that would manipulate people into going to war so they can feed off all the misery of that.
Yeah.
That's in the canonical Bible as well. There's a moment where the prophet Micaiah remote views this sky council where all the Elohim are, and they spend most of their time on that council fomenting war.
Yeah.
So that those who are energy-based can feed off that, and so the manipulation of fear is all part of that story.
Yeah.
And there's an entity there that we could call an archon that tricks one nation into going to war against another on false intelligence.
Wow. Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah. So it can feed off all the negative energy.
Yeah.
And these are great stories. I have to believe them that there are entities like that. But, you know, even if you take them figuratively, there's powerful information in that message. In a sense, algorithms behave in exactly the same way that archons do.
That's right.
Hey, Bim just got riled by that post. Let's send in 10 more. Let's get them really riled. Then they start engaging.
Yeah.
And
same thing happens.
We can monetize this rage that is now feeling. And I think if you understand how algorithms work, that's a real insight into how archons work. And I happen to believe we are surrounded in a soup of company, some of whom predate off us in that way. And the message, to take kind of messages, you've got to be very intentional about your emotional state.
Yeah.
If you are beginning to be called into a funk, you want to recognize that and check that quickly. If you're beginning to live angry from morning to morning, recognize that, you want to check that. You control your emotional state. Don't be manipulated. I mean, if I lived in Fort Lauderdale, I wouldn't watch the TV. Because on a daily basis, I'm seeing adverts for sickness on a daily basis. All these adverts saying, you know, is your water killing you? You might not be sick now.
You're going to be sick in a minute. And then all the side effects roll underneath the...
So I'd be in a perpetual state of anxiety. And I didn't want to go out today. So you've got to be very intentional about your intake. And just recognize the signs when you're going into not a good emotional state and check it. Do something to get yourself in a better headspace. Because if you don't, you're going to spiral in one direction or another. It won't be benefiting you. No. It will be benefiting something else.
That's so true. When you started looking into the scripture, how did it then lead you to ancient texts and tablets?
It was the root meanings as the key words. It was going to words like Elohim, Elyon, El Shaddai, Yahweh. Those are all the words that get translated as God, but it means the powerful ones, the powerful one more powerful than the other powerful ones, the powerful one, the destroyer. And then this name that is a really draconian name. And then from there, I looked at other words that hint at ancient technology. So you've got the Ruach, you've got the Kabod, you've got the Urim and the Thummim. And what's interesting is that technology is being described by people who don't know what it is. But they describe it so faithfully. You and I can read those texts and say, that is a drone. That is something like a Saturn V. They're the way they're using that. That's a wormhole. We recognize the phenomena, or we read weapons There's the Kedimathasal, or the Kedimashital, the book of Ezekiel. One you translated of the root meanings, you get to the shattering thing, the disintegrating thing. Apparently 6 individuals with the disintegrating thing can ethnically cleanse an entire district.
Wow.
Our ancestors would have read that and thought, you can't do that with a sword.
Yeah.
But you can't even do that with a gun. We can read that and picture the kind of technology that's being referenced there. That's Yahweh's technology, in case anyone is still thinking.
That's right.
And he wanted those people ethnically cleansed purely because they remembered he was one of many.
That's right.
And he wanted all the carvings of the sky armies that Saber Hashaleim destroyed. Anyone who wouldn't go and show public grief that those carvings existed, get rid of them.
Get rid of them.
People read that, they find it hard to imagine, but I would just say to them, there are countries mentioning no names in the world today that if you don't go into the public square and show open grief because your great leader is sick or has died, you run the risk of your whole family being executed.
Facts.
That's this world in the present.
Right now, 2023.
That's the kind of leader Yahweh was in the book of Ezekiel. So all these narratives are there that when you are a preacher and when you translate those as God texts, you have to tiptoe around them. You know they're crazy. And so what I found was, as a preacher, I always put that into I've got to get back to that basket.
Yeah.
And I went back to these authorities. I did the translation. And you only have to do the translation work for a couple of days before you realize you are in the cuneiform texts of ancient Sumeria, Babylonia, Arcadia, and Assyria.
Yep.
Those are the sources of all the biblical stories of the Elohim.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start reading those, the whole other world opens up. You can't go back and read the Bible in the old way.
No.
So it was a by degrees change for me.
Yeah.
I've known there were these problems for a long time. I suspected there would be T's in the Bible for a long time. But once I did the translation work, I thought, okay, this is actually a totally new direction in my work for the whole foreseeable future. Because it changes so much of how we live our lives and how we think about ourselves. It's not just different religious ideas. It changes your life.
Completely changed.
And the translations I use are the most broadly accepted translations of the cuneiform text. That's not me making translations up.
Right.
That's a bit of narrative.
Right.
These are translations that were made in the 1870s.
Yes, right.
1890s. And the narratives of ETs were there from that time to this.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of now saying, let's think through the implications of this.
You know what's interesting? Enoch is spoken of on higher court in the Bible, but his book is not in the Bible, right?
Well, it depends which Bible.
Yeah, well, the Ethiopian Bible, I think it's in that Bible. Yeah.
That's right.
Most Bibles omitted the book of Enoch.
Yeah.
And I was trying to find out why was that. And the only thing I could find was, I know that in one section in the book of Enoch, he talks about these beings coming down to earth and teaching mankind how to make weapons and teaching them how to make jewelry and perfume and all this kind of stuff.
I think that's the reason.
Yeah. I think that would.
And it's a scandal in a way that it isn't in the Bible. So kudos to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, because they have kept it in the Bible from the beginning until the present day. But I think that it should be, because the writer of Jude in the New Testament assumes all his readers have read the book. And when he quotes the biblical Enoch from the book of Genesis, he quotes the book of Enoch word for word. So anyone who takes the New Testament seriously should be reading the book of Enoch. And I'm pretty sure you're right. The reason it isn't in the mainstream canon is because it contains themes that didn't fit the mainstream.
Right.
So that includes an abduction narrative.
Right.
That includes an invasion narrative. It includes a detailed unpacking of Genesis 6, which is a hybridization narrative.
Yes.
And clearly there came a point in the development of Christianity where they thought, this is going to be inconvenient. What we really want here is a religion that's pyramid-shaped, with the emperor and God at the top, and then the people at the bottom paying, praying, and praying. The idea that actually the universe is more complicated, and they all might be having contact experiences, and they might be getting accurate information from somebody other than their bishop or the emperor, who can't be dealing with that. One news agency only can one source of information. We don't want contact as part of the faith, even though it's there in the Bible, 1 John 4.
Right.
And I think the themes of visitation, hybridization, and what I find really exciting, more than those, is a story of humanity's great leap forward. It says that we went from being creatures that lived in animal subsistence on the planet's surface to civilization builders because of non-human entities who came from outer space and taught us how to do these things. And I love that the Book of Enoch unpacks that enough to say it wasn't just that they taught us about how to do plumbing or how to build a bit tool.
Right.
It was things like art, makeup, adornments, more interesting clothing. They taught us how to be a civilization, and we were grateful for their input, and we celebrated them for a long time. And in the Eden conspiracy, I point out, you go to the prophet Jeremiah, he tells you openly, there was a time where you could go to every high hill and under every green tree, and you'd find an installation saying, thank you to Asherah, who came from outer space, from the Pleiades, to teach our ancestors how to become a civilization. And that's primitive Judaism, a remembrance of that great leap forward and all those who came and helped us. And then you get Jeremiah here, 2 Kings, and a king comes along and he says, I want to obliterate every memory of that. I'm going to destroy the carvings. I'm going to knock down the temples. We're going to illegalize the ceremonies. We're going to disband the priesthoods. I'm going to turn this into a religion with one God, Yahweh, the violent one. Because then you can justify anything. One God, one king, one temple in Jerusalem. All the ties of the whole nation can come to Jerusalem, thank you very much, to the high priestly family there. Forget all the other priesthoods. Forget all the other temples that the kings, the Jewish kings had set up. And I think a lot of people don't know that primitive Judaism was a celebration in paying a contact. And then you get Jeremiah, 2 Kings, and the narrative is changed so that everyone will forget.
Changed by force.
Still there.
Still there. And, one of the biggest things that's always missed with these sacrifices, they wanted to have some nice fresh meat and vegetables because those sacrifices is how they ate their food.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, there's another book that doesn't make it into Western Bible, called Bell of the Dragon. And it's quite an important book because it clarifies that the food sacrifices were not for the priests. The food sacrifices, a portion went to the priests, and then a specified portion goes to the Elohim, including Yahweh, for them to eat. And a specified number of the virgins to the Elohim, including Yahweh, for them to do whatever they want. And join the dots. That's not a transcendent God. That's not the source of the cosmos, needing all that stuff.
You see, like I always tell you, not the creator of the universe. We're talking about people. They're just people. They're with more advanced knowledge, but still people. Hominids of some type. Hominids.
Some hominids and some
reptilians.
As well.
Yes, exactly. Which is interesting because I want to study the Ubaid culture out of that region. I have some of the remakes or the scale models of some of the artifacts of the Ubaid culture, those reptilians. There's so many of them they found. Some had staff, some had loins, some were naked. So I'm thinking those probably were the working class, the naked ones. So some are a woman is breastfeeding a baby, but they have the reptilian head, the scales, and they found some of these structural remnants of their ancient structure still there. So this was a real culture that existed and lived on this planet.
And, I love to hear the mainstream academic explanations of these things. Sometimes they're hilarious.
They're hilarious. No, they're really funny.
It's just the inconsistency. You point to one carving, well, that shows what the people saw. This obviously is completely made up.
I know. That's just a fabrication. They wanted to make an entire mockery of a potential civilization that will never probably. No, they just what they created with these statuettes was what they actually encountered.
Exactly.
And I believe those statuettes might have been created by the Ube culture themselves.
Yes, I think that's very possible.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, I think you're on the right track there.
Yeah.
And of course, the academics do the same with representations of ancient technology.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to Mesoamerica
Yeah.
and you find all these carvings representing what looks like space helmets,
Right.
what looks like what we would call a Bluetooth
Mhm.
microphone earpiece, if you ask the guides in the museum, why did they carve that?
Yeah.
The answer is, well, those are symbols that imply advancement,
Mhm.
higher intelligence.
Mm.
And so the kings, the priestly kings and queens
Yeah.
would wear these so they look like an advanced being.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Is that what the advanced beings wore then?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean it literally.
Ah.
Hold on. Why does something like a Bluetooth represent advancement? Why
Right.
does something like breathing apparatus represent advancement? Something like a helmet, space
Yeah.
helmet, something like a space shuttle.
Mhm.
Why did they pick those symbols
Yeah.
to indicate advancement? You just go the extra step with your question,
Mm-hmm.
and you will have stumped.
Yeah. Oh, there you can see the steam coming out of their ears.
Yeah, that's right.
What we're talking about, sir, ma'am, is a cargo cult.
Exactly.
We're talking about a more advanced society that engaged a less advanced society, and that less advanced society deified them, and now are trying to mimic them
Exactly.
by any means necessary, just like they did in the atolls in the French Polynesia.
I love that you said by any means necessary.
Yeah.
Because the clue for me that it is a cargo cult we're looking at, if you look at the Jaguar dynasty, for instance, the Maya people and these depictions I was just mentioning, you'll have, say, Queen Shuk, for instance. She'll be wearing that Bluetooth, but it's not working because they don't know how to make it work. They put something together that looks like what the advanced beings wore, but it's not achieving remote communication.
Yeah.
And you know that because she's simultaneously doing a bloodletting to invoke an altered state of consciousness so that she can have a contact experience.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about your Bluetooth. I don't have to do a bloodletting.
No, we're not doing any bloodletting.
It's a little clue that they are copying technology they've seen, but they don't know how to replicate, and they know that the goal is remote communication.
Yeah.
And so I think, so that you're...
Yeah. I think we can kind of see this across the board, all around the world. Forget the United States, all around the world. You look into the Americas, for example, in the Mayan culture, you see that they inherit these super advanced civilizations. However, they're still pulling people's hearts out of their chest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, it's funny. People often say to me, hold on, you're saying the Mayans had all this advanced information about advanced beings. How come they were so brutal?
Yeah.
Well, again, it goes back to there was a time when we were governed brutally. Just because these beings had better tech than us didn't make them better than us. It just meant they could govern over us.
Yeah.
And sometimes they did it with brutality, and we just copied what we saw.
That's it.
And this is how we may turn power over others. So you've got stories in the Bible of Elohim, because they can get a human being to sacrifice their child. Well, now they know they've got total control.
Yeah.
And I think human leaders have copied that technique from that time to this. And that's why you can go back to at times in my history.
Yeah.
And that's what the human leaders did.
Right.
Was
Exactly.
display of power.
That was it.
And
Yeah.
terrorization. Because I don't want to go to, this is a very dark
Yeah.
strata here, but there has always been an aspect of the higher ups terrorizing ordinary people and benefiting from their terror in various ways.
Listen, if you go back and look at the Sumerian version of Yahweh, which is Enlil, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? So the Epic of Gilgamesh is the true and full story of Noah's Ark. It's Zudra and Gilgamesh and his created friend that went along with him on this hero's journey, and he's looking for Zudra. But long story short, in there, Enlil begins to get angry because the human beings are making a little bit too much noise. This is Yahweh, by the way. Kill them off. Here's the first occurrence of chemtrails. He literally says, spray their fields, dry out the crops, starve them to death. So we're talking about a being who's being looked upon as a god, who, whenever he gets good and ready, decides, just cull these humans off. Just remove. There's just too much noise. Oh, they're always hungry. They're always clamoring about. He goes, just kill some more. So you see this brutal, what you're talking about, this brutal way of ruling over them, showing them that their life was completely worthless and meaningless to them, and they would just kill them off whenever they wanted to.
Exactly. So he's there saying there are too many of them, they're too noisy, cull them, will say.
Yeah.
And so he does that spray. There's a spray story in the Mayan tradition as well.
Oh, wow.
Where the progenitors, as they're called, who are reptilians, feathered serpents, they began to say these human beings are just too much. They're too difficult to manage. They're actually too intelligent. We didn't need them this clever. And so they go back to the chief genetic engineer, which is Kukulats, Tzalcoatl, Kukulkan. Can you dumb them down? And he comes up with a vapor. When sprayed over human populations, brain damages them.
Wow.
So that they're limited to the immediate surroundings, their 5 physical senses. And beyond that, they'll have to rely on an authority to tell them what's going on. We can work with that, they said. So, I mean, goodness me, the brutality of brain damaging a whole population so you can manage them is a very, very similar ethic. And you talk about Enlil being the Yahweh character. He is sometimes in some of the Yahweh narratives, and it's often in the nastier narrative. So it's there in the flood narrative as well. As Enlil, he says, we'll kill them all with a flood. And then Enki, he is closer to the human beings because he's in charge of Project Earth, and he wants to rescue Project Humanity. And so he comes up with the rescue plan of the Pushtim, as you said, Trahasis. And that's how the story goes. So you got the younger brother Enlil, he's awful, and then Enki does a rescue job. But what happens in the Bible is worse. Because Yahweh is Enlil and Enki.
Right, they combine some of the two attributes together.
So he's actually double-minded. So he makes the humans and then changes his mind.
Right.
He's sorry for what he did. And you created this insane monster. And then, if you want to stay in the mainstream of Christianity, you have to justify it.
You have to justify it.
And say, well, no, that's fine.
Don't question God.
Don't question God.
Don't question God.
And so there we are. You really have to suppress your entire conscience to take that as a God story. I did a video recently on the Paul Wallis channel with the title, Did Jesus Worship Yahweh? Got a lot of attention. And I pointed out in that video that if you want to read those stories as God stories, the only way you can do it is to start justifying awful things. Start justifying genocide. And I had a whole heap of people coming on and saying, there's nothing wrong with genocide if God done it.
I had the same thing.
Can't prove my point.
I did a video called Could the God of the Bible Be Satan?
So it's the same message.
Same message. I think it's at 1 million, 2 million views or something. But same thing. A lot of the comments were like, people going, no, this is what God, this is how it was back in the day and it was okay. And I'm like, no, it's not okay.
No, it's not okay.
Not okay.
And this is why, you see, Christians are entrained to believe there's continuity between the stories of the Elohim, stories of Yahweh, you can what Jesus is all about. And it's not continuity.
No.
Jesus came to set people free. And he sets people free from Yahwism, which is why when you get to Acts 15, the apostles are all saying Christianity is not built on Yahwism. To get faith in those laws or belief in those stories, Christianity is going to be built on something else. And so the only way they can come to that decision was because Jesus put clear blue water between his idea of God, the source of the cosmos, and these awful, violent stories of beings who came and stole and killed and destroyed. These awful stories of the father of lies and the one who was the murderer from the beginning. He's not talking about the source of the cosmos. When he called Theos, father, daddy, he's talking about the Elohim and Yahweh stories. And we don't like them.
Exactly.
I think there's a wonderful definition of God that I find in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, because he's talking to a non-religious audience one time, and he says, by God I mean, or by Theos I mean, the source of the cosmos and everything in it, that in which we all live and move and have our being, of which we are all offspring, as one of your own poets has said. And what I love about that definition, there's no anxiety.
No.
There's no separation anxiety. It's not you are separated from God until you had to claw your way back into the No, you are an emanation of God. You're an expression of God. Your thoughts are an expression of divine intelligence. Your consciousness, an emanation of source conscious. You couldn't be closer to God than you are. It's something to learn, to enjoy, and actualize. And I find that such an empowering vision, and we have detracted from it by so much of our religious tradition. Get back to the root meanings, and it all becomes crystal clear.